Hi. I'd love to offer some words on Mercury going direct. And with that, not of course just Mercury direct, but also Saturn going direct. More specifically, or more precisely though, Mercury and Saturn are stationing, right? They're not moving at all right now, like barely. Initially starting to slowly begin their forward and direct movement again. So the nature of retrogrades and how both of them connect is something I'd really would like to unpack today. Also how we're moving from water in both to fire with both of these, and how this really feels like a seeding point in many significant ways, a new base level that will initiate us into the world changing, tectonic planes rearranging, timeline exploding, whatever. Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries in early next year in February. This really feels like from now on the energy will move forward towards that. And there is this big event horizon, right? Remember, an event horizon is in astronomy, it's called the barrier of a black hole, whereby the black hole sucks in more light than it can emit. The gravity gets so strong that you can't see behind an event horizon. And that is really what this Saturn-Neptune conjunction Aries feels like. It's happening behind a certain event horizon. Of course, we can study the cycles. We can study the last time Saturn was in Aries, or all the time Saturn was in Aries. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction cycle, very big things always happening with socialism and communist ideas, especially in Russia and China. You can track the Saturn-Neptune cycle with the ending of certain dynasties or empires or leaders, or the death of leaders, or the election and coming into power of certain leaders of these two domains of our planet Earth, but also in general the greater arc of where these ideas of socialist and communist ideas are very strong in the political sphere. You can track that over the centuries, even before there was the term communism. But at the same time, really, none of us has lived into any of that. And it is the beginning of Neptune through the zodiac once again, 165-year-long cycle. So there is a very big collective new beginning that no matter how much we study the past history, which can give us clues about the future, we really don't know. And yeah, this moment, Mercury now going direct, is like a big event horizon, or it's like the beginning to moving towards that event horizon fully now. Before that, I also want to throw in a couple of things that are happening right now in tandem with both, because nothing happens in isolation. Not a Mercury retrograde, not Saturn here or there or whatever. Also in your own personal birth chart, you can of course read about like, oh, your Venus is in Libra and your Mars is in Aquarius and they are in this house and that means that. But there is a greater whole, right? There is a greater connective thread, a deeper meaning, a deeper kind of logos, a divine kind of intelligence that weaves all of it together. And that is what I personally love so much about evolutionary astrology, is that it's really about bringing all of these different parts together and seeing what is the deeper meaning behind it. Apart from analyzing and understanding just like point X or point Z or point B or whatever in isolation, this really weaves the bigger structure of the story, the bigger context. It's not just like, oh, Mercury goes direct and now your emails will finally arrive and your broken car comes back from the car shop and that miscommunication you had 2-3 weeks ago, it got finally resolved. Sure, yes, also, but there is a much deeper thread. And what's happening right now is one of the two things I find worthy highlighting is that Venus, as of today, probably by the time you see this video, this is past and Venus will already be in Sagittarius. But in this very moment, Venus is still opposite Uranus on the last degree of Scorpio towards the last degree of Taurus. And now you might remember that when Mercury went retrograde and we had that very stormy Scorpio new moon, we had the most intense storms ever here on a Greek island where I'm. Mercury was also opposite Uranus, sparking maybe also very intense confrontation, right, or arguments. And now Venus, a planet of relationship per se, is also crossing that threshold from Scorpio to Sagittarius, but before that briefly has this opposition to Uranus. Uranus is, of course, in her own home sign of Taurus. And so we're also seeing like, whoa, there's something about, yeah, sure, we might have also confrontation, or there's a very strong-willed or a bit prickly, a bit unstable energy in the field, a strong self-willed nature. But this points also to the deeper side of the ending of Uranus and Taurus, about a deep reconnection with our inherent sense of self-worth. And we need that kind of stability to be able to do the kind of things that this Mercury retrograde specifically is so much about, right? It went from Sagittarius back to Scorpio. Now it's stationed at 20 degrees of Scorpio and will from now on slowly move forwards again. So it'll cover the same degrees for a third and final time, right? It went over to 6 degrees of Sagittarius and then went stationed retrograde, slowly moved backwards for 3 weeks, moved from 6 Sagittarius to 20 Scorpio, and now it'll cover the same territory for a third time. Of course, all the retrogrades, they either make little loops in the sky, little interesting loops, or sometimes they do more like a Z. So it's not like there's exactly at the same point, but they also make these interesting patterns. But that is more the longitude instead of the latitude, that way around. The latitude, the north or south latitude, instead of the zodiacal longitude with which we look at the single degrees of the zodiac. Still an interesting image to keep in mind regarding the deeper alchemy of Mercury. And this is, I think, what this Mercury retrograde is so much about, alchemy, right? In alchemy, there are the 3 main stages, rubedo, negredo, albedo. No, other way around. Albedo is the white one, negredo is the black one, the darkening, the purifying, the shadow underworld journey, and then rubedo is turning into the red, a new life force that's emerging out of the pure whiteness that initially was there. And Scorpio is, of course, also a deep sign connected to alchemy. And here I really want to unravel a bit the deeper understanding about what retrogrades really are. Because, of course, it's just an optical illusion from our point on Earth. The planets are not actually stationing and moving backwards, but because we on planet Earth are moving faster than they are moving, it looks like they are stationing and moving backwards in the sky. Still, everything is relative, and our own experience of reality is relative to where we are right now, most importantly in our body, hopefully, but also on planet Earth. So when a planet goes retrograde, its archetypal function is turned within. We don't have that outer expression so much, but the energy gets pulled within. Through the retrograde period, we work through things more internally, more subjectively, less in outer reality, less with outer physical reality and on that level, but also crucially, also more in our subconscious. Every retrograde is a more subconscious process. Once a planet goes direct again, which Mercury and Saturn do now, that energy shifts again and we come again into a more clear outer expression in outer space-time physical reality and not so much in the inner psychic stuff. That also means that after every retrograde, it's only once that planet starts moving forward, covers the same exact degrees for a third and final time, maybe activate something strongly in your chart on top of that. Maybe you've got something at the end of Scorpio or at the end of Taurus, and these activations of the last couple of weeks of Mercury really triggered something within you personally, right? Or maybe you were more of an observer and noticed it in the field, but one's not so strongly affected. Either way, the planet moving forward shows that now the process that was happening on the inner level and also more on the subconscious level, also more on the inner subjective personal experience of reality now starts to become manifest, now can move out in the outer world again. And this is why I also said, especially with this Mercury, it's true for every to a certain degree, but especially when it moves from Sagittarius back to Scorpio like we just had, that there is such a strong pull from we want to move forward with fire, with clarity, with vision, with meaning. But the resistance, the archetypal resistance between the underworld death portal of Scorpio to the new frontiers of Sagittarius, moving back there's an immense amount of psychic emotional resistance. And with that, it just deepens also this subconscious experience of whatever we've been working through with Mercury has maybe not been so super clear to our mind. Maybe not so super clear to the words that we can find for it. Maybe some emotions came, maybe a lot of memories came, maybe some dots starting to connect. But how we actually reweave and recontextualize and rethink that story that internally we have been slowly maybe unweaving, unthreading the connections and trying to make new ones, how that actually can manifest, how that can actually play out in our life will only become apparent now. But with that, we will get so much more mental clarity in the next coming days and weeks again, that maybe you felt really there was this huge wall of water or this foggy cloud that you've been in with all of this super strong water energy in the water trine. I was just cleaning my fireplace, the glass from my fireplace earlier. Why does it get dirty? It gets really dirty because the wood is too wet. So all this humidity gets out when the fire is burning, but then it creates all this soot. So, and this cleaning and this purifying so that one can see the fire again, but that the fire can burn more bright or more clear. This is exactly the kind of image, that's exactly the kind of energy that the Scorpio to Sagittarius tilt and shift here is signifying. So having gone deep through the deep emotional experiences, and with Scorpio, we always have to think about intimacy, relationships on a deep level. Where and how have we maybe been hurt in the past? Where is there still emotional stories lingering? Where there's maybe bitterness or resentment or anger, maybe even desire for revenge? Where and how trust and connection and a true deep sense of emotional bonding has maybe been severed in a dramatic way, in a way that felt like an abandoning or a backstabbing or a betrayal even. Where and how we did not feel safe in relationships on the emotional body has been deep stories that this Mercury retrograde has been working on. Like I said, mostly probably in our subconscious, not necessarily so much in the conscious mind. Doesn't mean you might not have had a lot of revelations or insights, but how you can live that story in a new way, how you can recontextualize that and rethink, is that actually true, or is that just a smoky glass in front of my eyes of how I consciously or unconsciously chose to view reality, chose to view my own past, chose to view my old pain or my own wounds. Or also the Sagittarius part, where and how I gave my life meaning, where and how I can find a sense of optimism, a joy, or the possibility for brighter, greater horizons, right? Or where I maybe felt stifled in that regard because all the emotional wounds have been holding me back. That inner identity has consumed too much energy for me to be able to have more joy, optimism, but also, and that's the other Sagittarius energy, trust and faith in myself, right? When trust and faith gets wounded and severed on a very deep level, the feeling of abandonment or betrayal might not even feel like a personal thing anymore from another human being or in our one-on-one family, romantic, friendship, whatever relationships, but we might really internalize that to such a deep degree that we feel we cannot trust our intuitions, because I thought this person would treat me well, but then they didn't. I thought this would be a good partner, and then he was abusive. I thought this would be a good whatever financial investment, but then they took all my money and went away. So this can severely sever our trust in ourselves. And here is again that Mercury opposite to Uranus, and now also today on this weekend, Venus opposite to Uranus, right? The shaking up, the trauma, but also the reawakening and liberating energy of of Uranus in Taurus, to find a greater stability again within ourselves, a relationship to ourselves. And that's what I meant earlier. We need that sense of inner stability before we can really have enough trust and trusting our intuitions enough even if we maybe feel that they led us astray at some moment in the past. They led us into some dark forest, and that dark forest was wounding, was painful. There was some monsters or some wolves there. So Mercury now moving direct, I think, will have so much to do with exactly that. Where and how has our trust, through feeling wounded from relationships, severed our trust with ourselves? And where and how is this moment now one about regaining a sense of I can trust my intuition, and through that I can also have trust and faith into life, into divinity, into God, into whatever name you want to give it, right? Because like I said, the betrayal might not even just feel personal anymore, but it might feel like we've been betrayed or abandoned by life itself, by cosmos itself. And if that happens, then what's the point of anything, and why am I even still doing this, or why am I following this calling or whatever? So this moment feels like such a pivotal and important moment to reconnect to that. A few crucial dates here is the 10th of December. Oh my God, it's already December. The 10th of December is when Mercury will be opposite Uranus exactly for the last time. And that might have a lot of echoes, or a lot of maybe even also completions, or maybe also the intense confrontation you might have had at the new moon gets resolved there. Whatever resolve means, a greater coming together or a true separating of ways. 10th of November. But also the new moon and this Mercury conjunction there, like I said, this might prompt and start to give us a lot of very profound psychological insight. I really feel that from that moment on, that's when they will really come. That's when you will get the download or the message or the email or the understanding that like, wow, here's something, and that's been holding me back from also Jupiter, Sagittarius, following my joy, following my passion, going my way. Remembering also, of course, right when Mercury went retrograde, Jupiter went retrograde in Cancer. And Jupiter in Cancer is so much about the expansion of our emotional body, the expansion of our capacity to feel, to sit with our feelings, but also the stripping away of the old, stiff, tight, too small exoskeleton of the Cancer crab that limited growth, previous growth. And even though this is about fire now, this is about moving forward into fire energy, the fact that all three water signs, Scorpio, Pisces, and Cancer, have been activated so profoundly here speaks so much about, in order to move into the new fire that next year also promises, right? Next year will also be, in Chinese astrology, it will be a fire horse year. So much dynamic energy. Saturn and Neptune in Aries, wow. And then Uranus also moving into Gemini. So much fastness. Fire and air, the elemental triangles, right, they point up. For the past years with all the outer planets, Pluto in Capricorn from 2008, Uranus in Taurus for the last 7-8 years, and Neptune in Pisces since 2011 and 12, we had this predominance of water and earth. And the elemental triangles of water and earth and the chemical symbols, right, they point down. But now we're shifting fully to fire and air, and the elemental triangles of fire and air point up. It'll be so much speed. There'll be so much expansion. There'll be so much newness, for better or worse. It's a brave new world out there. Oh my God, the AI stuff, like, I have to do a whole video just on that. But the emotional undercurrent here, and what I also said with the Grand Water Trine, that it really feels there is this very powerful river in our subconscious right now, that it's so much about purification and washing away, and also washing old identities away, washing old self-concepts away, and also washing away old ways of how we found meaning, this huge crisis of meaning that we're in, the huge change that's at our doorstep, will come in 3, 2, 1, and where and how also our faith, our belief, what we even give meaning to, right? Not just the personal crisis of meaning, but like our deeper capacity to feel a connection to something greater and beyond. We are in this big cycle of a huge ending, of a huge exhaustion, of a huge confusion. Look into the internet, look into what's happening in the world. So much confusion, so much delusion, so much disillusionment that will also surely come sooner or later, but Many people will also cling to the illusions quite strongly. And that is, of course, the last part of this video. Saturn going direct in Pisces. I made a whole other video about this. If you haven't viewed that, if you haven't watched that, check that out. But here in tandem, also remembering, right, Saturn in Pisces. Saturn is the conditioning of our mind, of our psyche. It's also the conditions and structures of outer world. But for this moment, let's focus on that inner part. Saturn in Pisces has been retrograde. The retrograde, the internal process of Saturn deconditioning our structures, deconditioning our patterns, deconditioning Pisces, our emotional body, resolving, releasing, letting go a lot of old structures, a lot of old canvases and what's the word? Scaffolding of our psyche that gave us a sense of stability, that gave us a sense of identity, that gave us a sense of Pisces. This is, I can believe in that, I can have trust in that, right? Sagittarius is more about like trust into one's own intuition and one's own path, and that divinity is supporting that. But Pisces is this ultimate trust in life, in the benevolence of life, in our human world and society also. And Saturn now retrograde has been washing away, has been deconditioning, has been eroding a lot as well. But now Saturn going direct means, okay, from now on is the moment you can start reinvesting into really building the structures that give you a new sense of stability. Structures that are in alignment and integrity, Saturn, with Pisces, your true dreams and visions. That is still Saturn work. It might be boring, it might be dull. It takes a lot of patience and effort and discipline and integrity and responsibility. But now Saturn moving direct in Pisces, and the last time Saturn does so, right? The last forward movement of Saturn in Pisces, like, this is about laying a groundwork now of certain structures and patterns and habits and psychic patterns and external patterns in your world, external structures in your world that can provide a container, that can provide a space, that can provide a scaffolding, a new scaffolding for the type of life and the type of dreams that you want to live. And with that, both going direct now, Mercury and Saturn. And then the last point, of course, also pointed this out in the Mercury retrograde video at the beginning of the retrograde, where I really went through all the different dates, that once Mercury crosses the point where it went retrograde, this is around the 14th to 16th of December, it reaches 6 degrees of Sagittarius again. So that's where it went retrograde, and from then on it really covers new ground, and then we're really in strong fire energy. Right around that time is also when Neptune starts moving direct. The last one here that is meant to go direct from Pisces and then to Aries. Sure, we still have Uranus retrograde, but that's another part. But the water energy will then fully come into this very strong movement from Saturn and Neptune to start moving towards Pisces. And that's probably mid-December when you will get a lot of new clarity, and truly the forward momentum, the speed will really return. Right now, Mercury takes a couple of days, but Saturn always takes more than a week or two to really start feeling the effect of it moving forward. As Saturn stations, as it does right now, it always feels a bit like time is standing still. That's the last word. When Saturn stations and the feeling of like time is moving forward so slowly, or we might feel sluggish or whatever, also not motivated, not energized, it might be frustrating. Very often it's very frustrating, let's not kid ourselves. But there's a deeper grace again of Saturn, that the stationing, the slowness, right? He represents linear space, linear time itself. And linear space also only comes through time. We can only experience space because of linear time, right? It's actually a big blessing. It's a big graceful energy of Saturn, so that we can find strong inner clarity on what kind of next steps we want to do what kind of structures or patterns or routines or disciplines we want to establish, we want to bring into our world, what kind of things we want to build up that have Saturn, substance, stability, endurance, right? That can support us also. The slowing down of Saturn that we might also still feel right now or over the next good week at least is a big blessing, because it really asks you, and this is maybe also my only type of advice for you or idea about this coming week, that as they're both slowly starting to move forward, Mercury and Saturn, that you take this week to really get very, very clear on what kind of new energy you want to start moving forward with. Because once it really does move, it's much harder to rearrange the pattern. Once the seeds are on the ground and slowly start blossoming and slowly start sprouting, it's like, sure, you can dig them up and like put new ones in there, but it does not hold the potency that this moment in time holds right now. So to reconnect to a sense of where and how Saturn and Pisces, Saturn is also a point of deep self-love and an expression of our self-worth and an expression of how much we believe in our own self, or Pisces, our creative visionary gifts that we want to bring to the world, that we need to bring outward. Right? I love the quote that's attributed to Christ. If you do not bring forth what's within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you, but if you do bring forth what is within you, what you will bring forth will save you, right? So that is so much Saturn and Pisces now, that Saturn is a point of an expression of our self-love, our self-worth, our belief in ourselves, to establish routines and structures and discipline and integrity with our Pisces creative, imaginary, spiritual, visionary path, and that can take a gazillion shapes, to have the tenacity and to have the will to really manifest something. Yes, it's also on some level about a deep release, and there is huge endings in the field, and there is a big event horizon, and that will probably shake everything up completely. But it's not also just about a time to just like play around with your thumbs and like wait for life, right? Then we're also spiritually bypassing them. We're not using astrology or these tools to inform us to help make good decisions, but we're just waiting for something new to happen, so it saves us from the dullness of our current moment, right? So in this interim, we can do the Saturn work, and that's what I'm going to leave you with now. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this gave something to you. Yeah, as always, I'm available for one-on-one sessions also if you want to meet me and really dive much deeper into your own personal birth chart and how and where these bigger cycles and smaller cycles are affecting you, the own blueprint of your own soul. That is your astrology, that is your birth horoscope. I'm always super honored and joyful to meet you for that. And yeah, see you next time. Bye-bye.